Welcome everyone to Relapse Prevention from Struggle to Triumph. That underscore title, Struggle to Triumph, I'm going to come back to that because that's really important for today. This is actually the first time I've presented this technique in the family systems trauma model. And arguably, it's one of the most important because it's not how you start and it's how you finish. So, I wanted to begin with an interactional poll in a second to get your input on the importance of this technique for your practice. And I know we have a lot of people who are coming on demand. We'll watch it later. So, hello to you and thank you for coming live today. We have so many people here today. But let me go ahead and share this with you. Did you know that there are tons of books and articles on intake and assessments if you do a Google search, but there's little in comparison on relapse prevention, and this can lead to the biggest cause of relapse. So I wanted to know how many people agree with that, yes or no, and we'll go ahead and put the poll question. Okay, so 94% agree, 6% disagree. So either way you slice it, this is an important technique because, as I said just a second ago, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And for those of you who have coming for the first time or come every month when I do a short 1 hour webinar, I want to let you know what our mission is to really train folks in all aspects of mental health, both clinicians, non-clinicians, parent support advocates, wherever you are in the mental health community. I hope that this is one step towards that mission of mastering these FST techniques and today's relapse prevention. And I hope even in 1 hour that you can walk out of here saying, I can use this tomorrow or today with whoever I'm working with. There's 12 techniques in the FST model with the book Treating the Traumatized Child, and we're on number 12, which is the last technique. There is two ways that we really help people learn this and master this. We have a self-directed 12-week online course that's actually beginning this week. I'll share a little bit about it at the end. For those of you who want to, you can sign up throughout April. And we have 3-day masterclass. So it's 12 techniques. Some people like to learn online, and some people like to learn live on a 3-day masterclass. So next month, I'm doing a webinar, same time, on Wednesday, May 8th, on anxiety. And this is, of course, a huge issue right now. And I'm going to be talking about how parents unknowingly sometimes over accommodate to their child's anxiety and creates a problem of relapse around this particular special treatment issue. So if you treat anxiety, please put this on a save the date and tell your colleagues about it. All right, let's jump in. There's 5 relapse prevention tools that I'm going to share with you with a case study, Dexter and his family, a progress scale, mini scale, decision tree, red flags, checklist, callbacks, and tune-ups. And even if you're not using the FST model, these still will be valuable, whatever model of change that you use. It's also important because when we look at a really important research work, The Heart and Soul of Change, even though it was published back in 2006, these authors wanted to know what are the biggest contributions to long-term change. 40% of change happens outside of therapy. In other words, does the client generalize your interventions as that becomes their new normal or second order change? And is there a stickiness factor that even a year after treatment, are they not recidivating or relapsing? Well, relapse prevention, I'm going to share with you, will increase your odds dramatically if it's done well, that this 40% can get locked in. The other thing we look at is the research on what's called readiness to change. A person by the name of Prochanska, DeLamente, and DeCross looked at that there is 6 stages of readiness for people to change. So people come into treatment typically not ready for change. We see this in families with kids where the parents comes in and says, fix my kid, but I don't see that I'm part of the problem or the solution. So they're in pre-contemplative, they're not ready. Our job, especially with FST, is to move them into contemplation. We have a technique called the motivational interview, where we get people to at least say, the caregivers, I'm not ready necessarily, but I'm getting ready. I acknowledge that maybe I need to move from fix my kid to I'm actually part of the solution. And then what FST does is we have what's called trauma playbooks. I'm going to share one or two with you today through the case study with Dexter, troubleshooting and do a lot of dress rehearsals, get them ready for change. And then there's an action where they execute the intervention and the person or family tries to actually change the problem that they're there, whether it's depression, whether it's disrespect, whether it's self-harm. They're actively trying to change with your help the problem. What happens, they found in the researchers, is a lot of families will start our clients at pre-contemplation and you go right to action, but you skip contemplation, you skip preparation. They fail and then they recycle back up to pre-contemplation, only now they say, been there, done that, doesn't work. And you often have premature termination or it doesn't stick. What the researchers often found was these two stages that are not done always well in mental health. The maintenance stage, how are we going to monitor relapse? If there is relapse, how are we going to spread it apart? How are we going to do relapse prevention? And how are we going to do really good termination? What are we going to do to stop the recycling after treatment's over? If if you're me in my early in my career, I would say to a client, "You're graduating, out of sight, out of mind. No news was good news." But a lot of times, clients would call me back, and I would say to them, "Why didn't you call me earlier, before things are now out of whack?" And they would say, "Well, you didn't really give me a clear path to come back for tune-ups." And I even felt bad about ourselves, like we don't want to bother you. So we've got to do a better job on maintenance and termination, so that all the other stages work much better. Dexter is a case we're going to talk about today. He's 10 years old. I'm in the role of consultant. The therapist is Michael, and you'll hear him on the tape with mom as we go through relapse prevention. This was a difficult case because Dexter had been in and out of treatment for many other therapists. He was when Michael got the case, the therapist said, "Good luck. This family has not really done well in treatment. We don't think it's gonna that you're gonna make a difference, but go ahead and try." This was within the agency, and the mom was very, very skeptical about treatment. She was in a very um, difficult position because she was angry at the child. She didn't think treatment would work. Dexter was extremely aggressive. In fact, uh, in one of his play dates, he threw the kid down the stairs, and the kid broke his collarbone. So this child has a lot of tendencies towards violence. School problems was just off the charts. The school would call at least once a day saying, "Come and get the kid." Attachment problems. There's so much drama and trauma that the both parents, the husband, Adam, and the mom were like, "We love Dexter, but we don't like Dexter anymore." And our unforgiveness is now turning to bitterness and resentment. So they are really along the stage of lack of attachment. Parents are not on the same page. They have different parenting philosophies, and the village is not engaged. They isolate themselves, they burn their bridges with their extended family. So this is a very, very stuck case. And Dexter has multiple symptoms or problems. So at the end of treatment with FST, Michael took the class. He went on for certification, and he's applying the FST model to this case. And so the first thing out of the gate in my role as a consultant is I'm going to ask them about progress on the interventions. And so let's go to that. So when a family comes in before graduation, you want to say, okay, let's review the interventions that we've done and let's see where you are on the progress scale. This is an important first step in relapse prevention. So these were the main interventions that were used by Michael as a coach. These are called strategic directives, or what we affectionately call as trauma playbooks, to put in the missing healthy undercurrent. In this case, there was lack of attachment. So Michael gave the mom, especially, an intervention called the positive Dexter report, which is to catch Dexter doing something right and start to change the dance between especially mom and son. And mom's going to talk about that a little bit in just a moment. Then the other intervention was that this was the first time that they had actually defined disrespect in writing. Before FST, it was off the cuff. They made it up as they went along. And she's going to talk about how just this one thing really helped, where they had it pre-written, and this helped calm things down tremendously. So, in a very solution-focused way, you put up on the board, or if you're doing telemedicine, you would show this slide, and you are going to get these slides after this with the recording that you can share with your colleagues as well. But you say simply, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how much progress are we making on these two interventions? 0%, no progress on the positive Dexter report, and then, or 100% maximum progress. And with the disrespect contract, how are we making progress? And you want the client to actually say, what am I doing right now that's positive, that's preventing my number from going lower? So if the parent says 70%, why isn't it at 60, 50, 40%? And you're actually writing this on the board so that the client is like consolidating the gains. Like, oh my God, I made some gains in treatment. I can put words on it. And then, of course, you go, well, what concrete steps do we need to raise the overall percentage? Now, if a client says to you, well, we're only at 20%, but we're ready to graduate, you can point to the board and say, not so fast. I don't think you're ready to graduate because we need to get this 20% up to 80%. It's what's called a measurable impact. And so this is a great litmus test with you and the client to say, we want to be at that 80, 90% range with each intervention. Maybe you do one, or in this case, we have two, so that we're feeling more confident that you are ready to graduate. So this is a really good kick the tires, check the family's pulse. You could do this with an individual or a couple. So as you watch this today, if any comments or questions come, please put them in the chat bar or in the Q&A, because at the end of today, Allison's going to kind of collect your thoughts and questions so we can have some really good discussions. So on this particular mini intervention, do you have any questions or comments about this? Put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A, because we'll talk about them at the very end. So that's the first one. Now let's watch this, because I'm a big believer that if I show a technique or talk about it, it's good experientially for you to see it in action. That's how at least I learned. So I'm going to watch for these healthy undercurrents around the intervention. Is it getting sticky? Is the parent saying, like, wow, what are we doing positive? Get the examples, write it down. Uh, do pregnant pauses. Give the client a chance to, you know, talk about their success. Um, Pace with them. Don't rush in like, oh, great, next question. Give this time to breathe. Be curious. Like the parent says, well, we have soft communication. You have a pregnant pause and you say, what does that look like? Tell me more about, how did you get there? How do you account for this change? This is solution focused talk on steroids. Let's watch, because we don't persuade clients. Clients persuade themselves. So we want to consolidate the gains in treatment and ask the client to do the work, because if it's more sticky, if they tell you as an expert, than give you all the credit, because then when there's a crisis, guess who they're going to call? Immediately you, and we don't want learned helplessness. So let's listen to the tape.
Top 3 things that you feel that you guys are doing that's keeping this number from going lower. I'm just going to write them down. Do you feel like you've been consistent? You know, that's just an example.
Yeah. For me, I think the number one is the soft communication. Trying to make the habit of arguing and like the strategies of how we approach like the cycle. Michael, what's that called? Like the dance? He called it the dance. Like this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Like we like break that cycle with the communication, the way we're communicating. I think that's
really important. So what she's referring back into FST treatment, if you've been on some of my webinars or taken the course, when we give an intervention to a client, like the positive Dexter report, we're like architects or doctors, and we'll map it out in what's called feedback loops. So we'll show the client, like, here's the higher calling of this intervention. It's not just to do it for fun and, you know, just whatever. It has a purpose. Your unhealthy undercurrent that you identified earlier in treatment is that there's a lack of attachment and nurturance. To counter that, we've got to do the opposite healthy undercurrent, which is to show you how to contend for those root causes of the aggression. And so we're going to map this out as what could happen in the future if you use this antibiotic called the positive Dexter report. So we map it out so the clients can see that this is a systemic dance, because most of Dexter's treatment has been individual. This is one of the first times that they're involved in family systems trauma. So the mom is skeptical. She says, this won't work. Michael's response is, well, what do we have to lose to experiment? Would you try the positive Dexter report for a couple weeks to fake it till you make it? And the mother took the challenge. And so mom's talking about how this intervention changed that dance. And she refers to it as a dance because that's what Michael refers to it. But it's really important for the therapist to say, wow, the client was listening. They are threading all the parts of the model to become their own, their new normal. So let's listen in on a little bit more of this, but I just want to highlight that for you.
That's like the number one thing that has helped us more than anything.
And could you give me a concrete example of when you did that, so I'm a visual person.
So last night, I had already made dinner. I had already given the warnings. Dexter likes to wait until I say, okay, time for bed. And then he'll say, I'm starving. I need to eat or I'll die. You know, like that whole dramatic thing. But instead of getting in a back and forth argument with him, I simply said, nope, time for bed. And I walked away and I turned the lights off. And before, wow. That would just get into that dance, so to speak, and we would be like yelling at each other in a matter of moments. That it ended and went to bed.
Yeah, I put it like I said, didn't take the bait. So that's a great example. So
I think the consistency of the rule, the definition of the rule, like having everything in writing allows us to be more consistent, because it's not, well, I wasn't disrespectful because I didn't mean it this way. It's like, well, this is our definition of disrespect. So it allows us to be more consistent with how we approach things and how we look at things. There's no question about what was it disrespectful or not, because it's in writing, and yes, that's disrespectful. So there's, again, like less arguing, there's less, like there's less time put into the thought process of, well, was I being hard on him, or, you know, is he right that I was too hard on him, or was I not hard enough because I'm feeling today? Because it's very clear, like, this is what we expect.
Again, I'm doing the happy dance as a model developer listening to this, because not only does the mom give credit to the intervention of disrespect that you just saw a moment ago of it in writing, but she's also connecting it to the higher calling of the healthy undercurrent of consistency. Because one of the things that was getting them entangled was that a lot of Dexter's symptoms of aggression and disrespect was because before FST, there was nothing in writing. The mom would discipline based on how she felt. And for a 10-year-old kid or a 20-year-old kid, there's nothing consistent about that. So mom is now, the chances of stickiness goes up, because mom is not just saying this is an intervention, but it's connected to a higher calling. So ask yourself, as you watch this, could I do something like this with my clients? What difference would it make to whatever intervention we give? You know, what to pause on the progress scale. Let's go on. Now, this is my favorite one. Mini scales. There's something in treatment called first order change or second order change. First order change is defined as when you get involved in treatment, the client changes temporarily. Like one kid said to me, as soon as I get off of juvenile probation, I'm going right back to the old way. What that child is describing is that the only reason he's changed is because some external force is monitoring the behavior, but there's been no internal change. So first order change just is temporary. You also see first order change when the client leaves treatment and they call you for everything. You just get the feeling that there's no permanent change. Now, what we do and what our job is to move people from first order to second order change. Well, how does that happen? Well, you're seeing it happen right before your eyes right now as mom talks about, these are my healthy undercurrents. I own these. These are my new normal. I use the positive Dexter report as a crutch to start walking again, but I'm catching him doing something right all the time now. I use the crutch of the disrespect contract to be more consistent, but I'm being more consistent. We even heard mom say, you know, normally when Dexter goes to bed, he tries to push my buttons, and normally I just take the bait. But this time I'm consistent in one thing, now I'm consistent in something else. So when you get the client to actually drill down to the healthy undercurrents, then you've got the preponderance, or the odds go up, that we're into second order change or stickiness. That 40% that Scott Miller talks about is starting to coagulate, consolidate, become like concrete. I always like to look at relapse prevention as the three little pigs and the big bad wolf. Like they come to us, and metaphorically, the three little pigs, where they're just in a straw house, and so as soon as the wind blows, or the big bad wolf, they just crumble. Our job then is to move them to a stick house. Well, it's a little more firm, so when the wind blows, the house doesn't blow in. The big bad wolf can't get in as easy. And then my favorite one is a brick house, where now the house is brick, the cement is drying. And so even when stress happens long after treatment's over, the big bad wolf, the house doesn't fall apart. So right now, these mini scales are kind of our magic potion, if you will, to help people get to the brick house. I hope you guys like that metaphor, but some people really like stories like that, and you can use that one if you want to. So I'll say to, in this case, the mom, these were the healthy undercurrents for your particular family. Everybody will have different ones or some similarities, but the first one for her was avoidance of button pushing. She got her buttons pushed all the time, and it led to what's called interactional trauma, or drama equals trauma. So she talks about why before FST she was at a 1.5, and after FST, or where she is now, she's at a 4. Now that's a big jump for a mom to go from 1.5 to 4. So we ask her about that, and she gets, watch the energy level go up as she starts to consolidate the gains of saying, knowledge is power, role plays. And then she goes to consistent discipline. She's from a 2 to a 3.5, almost a 4. Soft communication, her biggest jump, 1 to 5. And she now maintains a support village. For the sake of time, I'll show you the first one, but listen to the energy level. And when you have healthy undercurrents, these mini scales are gold. So let's watch and see how it's a game changer for second order change, how it dramatically increases our odds for second order change, how it increases what's called stickiness for these healthy undercurrents or root causes, and then root work, not weed work. And this is what leads to second order change. So if you have any comments or questions about that, or if that's a paradigm shift for you, I'm glad you're here today. I just loved it when people framed it for me. Scott, are you doing first order change or second order change? And so let's watch this.
Did you start before? What was the first number you think comes to mind?
Like 1.5.
Okay, 1.5. Okay. And where are you today? It's really not after you're still involved, but I guess after is today. Where would you say you are today?
After implementation of
Contract, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or just overall,
Should be now, but yeah.
Let's go with 4.
Good.
Amazing. It's really good.
And I think you've already answered it, but I don't want to leave any stone unturned. Just overall, what do you think has been how do you account for this jump? 1.5 to 4 is really pretty good jump. Overall, would you say, what's the major things that are accounting for this leap?
I think with some of the first counseling sessions that we had with Michael in the office, and it was Adam and I with the paper on the wall, and he literally showed us step by step the dance, and we used our words and we said it as he was drawing it, and how it just feeds into each other, and just the realization that we're throwing fuel on our own fire continuously, and we are in control of not feeding that fire and kind of just seeing it. So that was big step number 1, was understanding how it works, and then just, I think, just continual conversations and checkups, and even like the ridiculous role playing. Like, it's silly, but when you just force yourself to do it, you catch yourself, like, I don't know, like, it's hard to get out of those habits. But I guess lots of intense, in-depth practice.
Where were you before, and where are you today?
I would definitely be a 1 before.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. What's your gut?
I'm gonna go 5 here for me.
Good job.
Woo! Yeah.
I would.
Yes. Okay. Biggest jump. So, gotta know that's the biggest jump. So what do you think that one is to jump that many?
I'm well medicated. Besides that. I hate to be a broken record, but it's the same thing. Like, it's knowing your buttons, knowing strategies, knowing the effect that it has on everything, but also like knowing how to do it, what to say instead of this.
So again, I'm smiling from ear to ear, and so is Michael, who's in the room. That's her therapist. And if you could have seen the mom at the beginning of treatment, how angry she was, how this will never work, to see her today is like night and day. And again, she's bragging on herself. She's convincing herself of how she is doing it. And also, she's highlighting the parts of the model for her that were big. Because one of the techniques that we're not doing today is we're very big on troubleshooting, like helping the parent think 2 steps ahead. And we're very big on role plays or dress rehearsals. And she's saying to us that this is paying dividends for her. So the mini scale. Now let's go to the decision tree. And let's go to the third one. This is important because we often don't give the client like door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. So we say to the client, do you feel, and it's collaborative, that you're ready to graduate after doing the progress scale? You're at 80% or higher on your interventions. Your mini scales are looking good. Are you ready for what's called graduation and red flags checklist and callbacks? And you'll show the client what that looks like in just a moment. Do you think we need to tweak the current playbook and negotiate more sessions? Do you think we need to pick a new symptom that's maybe come up as we've solved one and build a new playbook or a written plan that you saw with the positive Dexter report or the disrespect contract? Are there other safety or misuse of power issues emerging? Like we've had cases where things are going really good, and then all of a sudden the mom starts to show depression, for instance, or things get worse before they get better. Or are you going to terminate against our recommendations? So here, in the old days, we didn't used to give clients this decision tree, and they weren't collaborative in this process. So we just would say, well, I think you're ready to graduate. There was no discussion of an intermediate step. So here, this is clearly outlined. And how do we know when treatment ends is the question of the day. And mom has a real sense of humor at the end, throws Michael a zinger. But sense of humor is really a good sign here. So let's listen in on what mom thinks is the next step. And also the sense of humor we'll talk. I'll just highlight that.
And then where do we go from here? Are you ready for graduation? And I'll show you the red flags checklist and callbacks. Do we need to tweak the current contract and have more sessions, which I think that's where we're at? Do we need to pick a new problem and build another playbook? Do you have any other safety issues or misuse of powers that have emerged that we haven't talked about? Or do you want to just terminate against our recommendations? So it's good to kind of say, all right, where are we today? And so then I'll get into the red flags checklist in a moment, but let's take this one bite-sized piece at a time. So
today, now it's fair to say that we're at like level E right now.
Oh, you want to terminate against recommendation?
Cynthia.
I'm kidding.
Okay. See, Cynthia has a good sense of humor. Okay. All right. It probably feels that. Go ahead.
I got a good poker face. I just got Michael.
So she decides that we need to tweak the playbook because Adam, her husband's still at 30% for Dexter. He's at 90% for the other child, who's a little bit younger sibling, Maxim. Cynthia says, my husband's a pastor. He's not always been able to be at all these sessions. I think we need to bring him along, that we're doing a lot better than we think. I need to go over these mini scales with him, sit down at the kitchen table with him, and I need to see where he's at. So I'm not ready to, graduate, but I would like to see what it looks like in the future because I think we're close. And I say, great, let's go ahead and do that, where we might need to tweak the current playbook and also get Adam more on board to make sure that we're not missing anything. But let's go to the red flags checklist so you could see what it might look like. So Cynthia gets really involved and she says, well, I want to help create it. We said, yes. So this is what's called, to increase in psychology, what we call protective factors. We actually will laminate this for you. It will be something that you'll maybe put up on the bathroom mirror. These are things to look for of why you might come in for a tune-up. In FST, we don't always think that you need full-blown treatment, but maybe 1 or 2 sessions just to get back on track. And it also includes a call back and tune-up. So she's very curious. So you say to there's 4 parts of a red flags checklist. In the future, we want to look at any areas of the trauma playbook that are not followed, will indicate the beginnings of relapse. We want to know if there's any areas of safety that could happen now or in the future that you think might happen. What are you going to do about it? Do unhealthy undercurrents start to return? Like you said, soft communication was at a 5, but what happens over time if, for whatever reason, you start to be not soft in your communication or inconsistent in your discipline? And then we want to schedule a first callback, because the research shows that if you're going to relapse, the odds go up in the first 90 days. So we want to do a callback in 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And we want to actually put this on the calendar, and we're going to actually discuss the red flags checklist. So if I was calling you, Cynthia, in this case, Michael, you would say, hey, let's look at your red flags checklist. If you don't have it at your fingertips, I do, because normally when we call people back, we say, how you doing? And they say, oh, fine, or it's not good. This will force the discussion to be, okay, are any of these red flags starting to happen? So Cynthia said, I think if Dexter or Maxim is not following the contract for 3 straight days, that might be a sign of a red flag. Dexter becomes disinterested or despondent in the contract playbook for 7 days. And here's the steps I think we should take. Now, the therapist is very active here. They're not just sitting back passive. Sometimes the client's like, I'll call you. No, what we want to do is we want to make sure that you take the first steps, because we want what in our mind, second order change. So dad and mom are going to talk to one another, identify barriers. If there's difficulty getting back on track, then they'll call Michael, the FST counselor, when all areas have first been discussed. We're empowering the client against learned helplessness. We want to be fired from our job, but we want to do it very strategically. Then the next was, she said, he was aggressive. He's not aggressive now, but if he starts to be aggressive, or way back when he did self-harm, he hasn't done it for over a year, but just in case. Sometimes in the past he would run away, but now he's just staying on the property, which is good. But we really want to call grandfather, because he's kind of like Dexter's favorite grandparent. And we think the grandfather could come in and really help, talk with Dexter about getting back on track with any of these things. And if not, we'll call you, Michael. The third one is that the parents become inconsistent with rewards and consequences. They start going back to what's called caustic communication or button pushing, where they're yelling, screaming, lecturing. They start to go into seclusion, where they don't reach out to their village. And here's the steps. We'll do a check-in meeting to reevaluate where we are. Not working, we'll have a village meeting with my parents and Adam's parents. And if we don't make a correction to this, let's maybe call in Michael for a tune-up. And then the callbacks is Michael left Cynthia with when they were actually Adam comes in again. They refine the red flags checklist, and then Michael puts on his calendar a 30-day callback, a 60-day callback, and a 90-day callback. It's a little bit of work for us, but it's so much more work when they come in and they're totally like way out there. And this is something that a lot of us just do. When we graduate clients, it's sometimes out of sight, out of mind. Here, as we close today and get into questions, I wanted to consolidate the gains you made today and then get to questions and answers. Is you leave this webinar with micro step tools to do part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. So my call to action is try this out with a client and see how it works for you. And so for those of you who really want to go deeper, let me kind of show you where to go next, maybe now or in the future. So one of the things that I decided to do was that I wanted to help people go from these overview webinars. And for those of you out there saying, I want to really learn this, I want to get confident in this, I don't want to have to go back to graduate school. A funny story for me is I had my MSW, and I didn't know how to do family therapy out of a wet paper bag. And yet my first job was a family therapist. And I couldn't find any step-by-step tools. So I ended up having to actually go back to graduate school and learn this. But until I was confident, I wasn't going to do it. So I thought to myself, even back then, the seeds were planted. Could I someday be a person that helps people learn this stuff quick and I have to go to graduate school, do it in the community? Because I used to be a professor. Okay. I'm not anymore, but I play one on TV. So I want to show you just a little bit of background of this because I think for some of you might really like it. Just take a few minutes. It's something that's like I said, totally optional. But if you're interested to look at the video, I'm just going to show you a few slides here. Definitely Allison will put this in the chat bar, but just put in getfstdigital.com. And if you're part of an agency, one of the things that we're really getting excited about is we're working with the entire agency to help them become a family trauma center of excellence. So if they're part of an agency and want to do it there, please email us for group rates. But Allison will also put this in the chat bar, but here's what the training looks like. There's 10 core techniques plus 2 bonus. And the first phase of treatment is the engagement phase. And then you'll see that I do coaching. So one of the things that I wanted to do is as people go into the course 24/7, whenever it's their time, I wanted you guys to be able to come at every third technique where we actually come together, where we do dress rehearsals and practice. I show you delivery techniques. And so you're actually learning family systems trauma on steroids. And so here's what it looks like through the back door, so you can kind of just see it. When you decide to take the course, you would be getting a login, and you log in, and here's what the course looks like. So we're doing an orientation on Friday, but you can sign up for the course at any time in April because everything's recorded. But on your own time, you would go to the motivational technique and you'd see 3 lessons. And you would go to lesson 2, for example, the motivational script. And it's only like about 22 minutes. And then you download the worksheet. And like today, I'd work with real cases. And then you get to actually just have the script in front of you. And you also get the book as part of the course manual. So it's a very easy, straightforward way to get your CE units, but also just really learn this stuff in bite-sized pieces. So that's kind of just like an inside look to the course. And so here's the value add, I think, for those that might be interested someday. The live coaching with me, I think, is really going to be a value add for folks because they'll look at the technique and then they'll come to the office hours, either live or on demand, and watch how we practice together to deliver it with excellence. It's 12 techniques in the course of 12 to 14 weeks, real case examples throughout, a copy of the book, Train the Traumatized Child. And there's a video search engine that you can search any term and it goes right to that part of the course. There's 12 hours of continuing education. And then also people who graduate sometimes say, I want to go on for certification, which means I got the knowledge. Now I want to meet with one of the people at Family Trauma Institute and go over onboarding these techniques in a small group over the next 6 months, where I take the techniques and I onboard them with a real case. So these are the transformational goals. Confidence skyrockets. You learn it with excellence and quickly, step-by-step tools, and we're not alone. You're with a community. And you get the coaching on how to deliver these with excellence, and that's it. So I hope that you might consider it. It's $5.95. I tried to keep the cost really down. And also some people just may want to go ahead and do a payment plan, which is fine as well. So I hope some of you out there, either now or in the future, would be interested in taking the course. So with that, Allison, I wanted to ask if there were any questions or comments about today's technique on relapse prevention from struggle to now triumph with these mini tools.
Okay, yes, we have a lot of questions, Dr. Sells. So question number one, they want to know if this was a virtual session with the client, and if so, does this work well for all sessions with the family?
Yeah, I mean, this session was in the COVID environment, so everything was telemedicine. But what we found was that telemedicine is still used today strategically, and clients would comment that this model with the slides would keep people engaged instead of drifting. So there are people that are certified in FST, really love FST, where they mix rural clients with telemedicine, urban, more accessible clients face to face. So it can be used with both and it was virtual where Michael was the therapist and I came in as a consultant to go through this with the mom, and we were definitely in, different states. So yes, to answer your question, it's very helpful both and. Next question.
Okay, here's a question that I certainly can relate to. It is, I really don't like to deal with addicts. Can you please tell us how to get over ourselves to help people with addiction?
Well, it goes back to the confidence thing, and success breeds success. I've had people who have taken the course or continued to come to the monthly webinars, and they say, you know what, Scott, I try out these techniques. I have some blind spots. I have, some people say, like Sigmund Freud, transference and countertransference. And this particular special treatment population pushes my buttons. Like I have trouble working sometimes with anxiety because I get anxious because I have anxiety is an issue for me. But what happens is when the tools start to work and you get moments like this where the client says, my mini scale jumped from a 1 to a 5, it just softens you up to work with all types of clients because, as mom said, the model is very systematic, it's clear, it's step by step. And so when I have a population that's hard to work with, if I have those guardrails, those handrails, and I start to see people get successful, then I go from, struggle to triumph. And so it's hard to explain unless you actually do the course or whatever. But I can tell you that was for me what happened, where my pain kind of became my ministry, where when I was a young graduate student, there was just nothing out there step by step. And so when I started to do family therapy successfully, I was able to work with all types of cases where I just was like, I don't know if I want to work with them. I don't know if I can work with them. But it was like a Las Vegas odds maker. The odds were going up. So I hope that helps.
Okay, we've got a lot of comments talking about how important the continuity of care is, and a lot of folks with that. Carla kind of had another question that's related but not direct, and so she's asking, or they are asking, when attachment concerns are above and beyond the main issue, safety is a concern. Where do we find resources in today's world that provide that higher level of care for our younger clients, like around 8 or 9, even though attachment therapy has been utilized, but the family is still in danger?
Yeah, in this case, that's what was happening. Like before we could really get to some of these undercurrents of attachment, we had to stabilize first because remember, Dexter comes to Michael after throwing a kid down the stairs and breaking his clavicle button. So the first thing we had to do is do a intervention around stabilization where the mom and dad had to effectively use a timeout procedure, which was a total mess. So we had to do a lot of role plays, or Michael did under some of my supervision, and the family got successful because, again, of the dress rehearsals that are really emphasized in FST, and mom and dad agreeing to an experiment because they were of the opinion, after being in treatment failure for so long, that nothing would work. But as the mom said, it was written out, it was step by step. They got a lot of dresser, so they're successful. Then mom's more open to come in with the positive Dexter report. In some cases, some clients do it at the same time. It's called a hybrid, where mom is got tools to stop the aggression or safety and dress rehearsals to back it up, and dad. And while they're doing that, they're also doing the positive Dexter report. So what happens is what's feeding the aggression is capped off with stabilization, but then the undercurrent that's driving the aggression, which is nurturance and attachment, is happening at the same time. So this, again, I hear you, safety first, but oftentimes there's not clear direction. So if you ever get my book, Treating the Traumatized Child, there's a whole chapter on safety and when to talk about it, when to use it. I call it like mental health vital signs. Like when you go into the emergency room, the first thing they do is take your vitals. I need your blood pressure. I need to take your temperature. Before we do anything else, we need to first see, is your body unstable? Well, we need a mental health vitals. And so this case was a really good example to answer that question. I feel for you. There's not a lot out there for both stabilization and trauma and how they work together at the same time. Next question.
Okay, that's all the questions that we had today on the presentation. I did have a few administrative questions. So just to clarify, everyone will receive a copy of this recording along with the slides via email tomorrow. And the link for the course is getfstdigital.com. We do have an orientation session that starts this Friday, but the course is self-directed, so you can sign up, get started anytime. You have 6 months access to the course and all of the resources in that. So you can sign up now, you can sign up a little later. We will be opening up the course again in the fall as well at this time. So, okay, so Fabiola just had a closing comment that she was glad trauma and safety were covered. Just got a new case where the child is violent with other children. And welcome, Fabiola, because she just signed up for the course. So we'll be seeing you in that as well.
Yeah, and thank you.
Dr. Sells.
And Luz says that really liked the presentation. And then just one thing to support Allison's administration in the future, if you go to familytrauma.com and just scroll down to the bottom, you'll see all the upcoming monthly webinars on the left and the training masterclass or online courses where you click register. So that's just another way to just easily go to the homepage of the Family Trauma Institute and just scroll down, and everything's there in a very easy to access, kind of consolidate everything for the year. So that just might help some of you as well. All right, everybody. Well, I hope to see you next month on anxiety. This is a really difficult one. But I think it'll be wherever you are in anxiety, if you do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, this will be a nice enhancement of both and systems work with anxiety, as well as cognitive behavioral type treatment with anxiety. So thank you all. Hope to see many of you next month. Same time, same channel, May 8th. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye now.